Good evening, everybody. I'm Keith Kuntz.
I'm Ann Nyberg. There's so much heartache in so many communities tonight. More than a dozen homes in places like Milford, East Haven, Fairfield have been lost to waves and wind.
Here is a live look at the State Emergency Operations Center in Hartford, where we are expecting an update from Governor Dannel Malloy on the storm in just about a minute from now.
And right now there are more than 443,000 CLMP customers without power.
Taking a look at United Illuminating's outages right now, more than 149,000 people are currently without power right now.
Again, we are expecting Governor Dannel Malloy to give an upgrade on the damage and relief efforts that have been going on all day today. He's been touring the state. He's been looking at the homes that have been devastated. Some have been washed out to sea. The roadways opened back up in the state today so that people could start to get on with their lives, and so much cleanup is going on today.
The governor went up and down the shoreline earlier today so we could get a first-hand look at the damage. Also, there's been a lot going on with mass transit. We will not see Metro North service restore completely, it appears, certainly for a few days. Bradley is back open, but there are so many problems up and down the East Coast with airports that if you're traveling by plane, it's going to be a problem for a few days as well.
I was out and about today along the shoreline and looking at the devastation, and now we see the governor coming in. He's going right to the podium, and let's take a listen as to what he's going to tell us.
Good evening, everybody. The Lieutenant Governor and I spent the day traveling around the state to some of the hardest hit areas, because there are many hard hit areas. I want to talk about that for a few minutes, as does the Lieutenant Governor. Then I'm happy to take some questions. Today I visited Newtown, Easton, Greenwich, Stamford, Bridgeport, and East Haven. At each stop, I saw people who love their home and their town and who are determined to get their lives back to normal as quickly as possible. I saw people who are resilient. I saw local officials, first responders, National Guardsmen and women, and members of the Connecticut State Police, all working together. And I saw linemen, many of them from out of state, including one crew that I had a discussion with that was from Kansas City. To everyone, thank you for what you've done, is what I reported to each of them. And I thank them for what I know they will continue to do in the coming days and weeks. I do want to say that one stop I made in Easton was a very sad one. There we lost a firefighter who died doing what he loved most, trying to help people. Our hearts go out to him, his family, and his colleagues, and we want to thank him for his service and his sacrifice. I also visited firefighters in Greenwich who, in the midst of the hardest portion of the storm yesterday, had to confront house fires that actually ultimately spread to 3 adjoining structures, 3 houses. That's not amazing in and of itself. What is amazing is that in 60-mile-an-hour winds and with a tidal rush coming at them, they were able to fight those fires and stop those fires from spreading to at least 12 adjoining structures. And it was an amazing piece of work that they accomplished. And to think that I had just visited as well the work site of one of our fallen firemen of the state. Before I begin to give you updates, I'd also like to ask the Lieutenant Governor to say a few words about what she saw today.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate that. And I want to take the opportunity to thank all the people that I visited today. They truly were welcoming and were strong, and it was an amazing visit. I was in East Lyme and Old Saybrook, and it was clear to me that the impact of this storm is something that's going to be felt by our residents for a very, very long time. In East Lyme, I spoke to 2 sisters who had lost their home. It was once owned by their mother, and my message to them was, while the house may be gone, the memories, the wind cannot blow the memories away. I met a man who had just rebuilt his house and rebuilt a seawall after Hurricane Irene, only to find that once Sandy was all said and done, there was still significant damage to his house. His house was moved 25 feet, and there was no front to it. I think his story speaks to the historic nature of the storm. As I went around and spoke to people in different schools, today that has been spending the last 2 days in these schools, their resilience is up. They're ready to go back to their homes and see what they can do. But they thanked everybody that's been out there helping them. With all the volunteers that came into these shelters, all the volunteers that are helping each other's other houses, it was amazing today. You know, fortunately for us, Connecticut residents are tough. And I know that the people I met in southeastern Connecticut today are proof of that. And I know that they will rebuild and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. So let me spend just a few minutes updating you on today's developments. Then I'm happy to take your questions. I spoke to our congressional delegation, all of them, as I did with our 2 senators, elicited their support in making the case for Connecticut to receive a declaration. Just as I was walking out here, I received a call from FEMA. A declaration has been made for the 4 counties representing the shoreline communities in our state. This was done on an expedited basis, and it was done based on the 2 conversations that I had with the President today, myself as well. The second conversation, he called up to follow up on details that I had mentioned in our multi-governor briefing. Getting this assistance will allow us to provide aid to our residents and to alleviate the financial burdens of restoration to our municipalities. Let me just note that the declaration immediately is for the 4 counties along that represent our shore. We will pursue, and I believe we will receive, declarations for the rest of the state of Connecticut. Getting assistance and relief into Connecticut is my top priority, and I want everyone to know that I am squarely focused on it. In addition to relief that people need, I know the big question people want answered is when the power will be back on. I'll let the utility companies go into detail on that subject, but as I've said over the past few days, I know how focused people are on that issue, and I can assure you I am too. As of a few moments ago, we had approximately 590,000 customers without power. It's not just homeowners and renters I'm worried about. It's water supplies. It's critical care facilities. The list goes on and on. We have better backup systems in place than we did last year, but getting our power back remains a top priority. I will say that I saw many line crews out there today, and that's a good thing. But as with last year's 2 storms, folks, there's a lot of damage out there. Our expectations have to be keep that in mind. We will hold everyone accountable, but we also need to be realistic as well. A few other updates, then I'll take questions. All state employees should report for work tomorrow at their assigned time. In areas affected by power outages or flooding, state employees should contact their agency work locations to get an update either on the status of your work facility, alternative work assignment, or any other directions that they may have available for you. Due to the devastation in New York, it may be a while before public transportation in Connecticut to and from New York City is restored to normal. Amtrak will definitely not be operating tomorrow, nor does it look like Metro North will be running. There are some discussions happening about some type of shuttle service between Stamford and New York, but nothing definitive yet. If anything develops, you'll be the first to hear of it. Here in Connecticut, our bus service is back to normal, as is Bradley Airport. I think when you see what happened, I think when you all get out and see what has happened up and down the East Coast and look at what's happening here, we should be thankful it wasn't worse. It was bad, really bad, as I am quoted as saying it would be, but it could have been a lot worse. As we did after last year's storms, we'll learn lessons. We'll make improvements based on what we've seen over the past few days and how everyone has performed. But I am and will remain squarely focused 24/7 on doing whatever I can on behalf of the people of the state of Connecticut to get people's lives back to normal as quickly as possible. I note that Congressman Chris Murphy is with me. He's been with me a couple of times today, and I appreciate his help, as I mentioned, all of the congressional delegation. Please Please.
What immediately does this declaration mean to the residents and businesses of New London, New Haven, Fairfield, and Middlesex counties?
This covers a myriad of benefits, both personal and to the communities, and we'll get you some additional language. What it means is getting our declaration before landfall has led, as we thought it would, to a rapid decision on the declaration on those areas of our state most obviously hit. It means that there'll be more support coming than there would have otherwise been, but I'll leave it to our FEMA people and our folks in the office to get you a description of what all of that means in detail.
Do you think anything could have been done along the shoreline? In your homes there, clearly they're going to be vulnerable probably in any big storm. But I know in the past you've talked about reinforcing it. Is that something that you're talking about now?
Well, you know, I was down in Cozy Beach. Those that raised their structures just since last year came through pretty much unscathed, and those that were at surface level as it existed a year ago received the brunt of the damage, which is a way of saying that if the federal government could help us in some way to figure out a way to get the raising of these things affordable for people, that would be a great thing to see. Certainly potentially less expensive than paying to replace them from time to time, or the insurance cost or other costs associated with it.
Did you get any input today, either from local officials or people here, about the situation that you had a special news conference on last night? Why so many people were stranded and caught off guard?
Well, you know, I think we have to draw a couple of things. Number one, I have a story to tell about a person I met in Greenwich. So just remind me when I'm done with this. All right. What we think happened is that the people who were actually right on the water listened better than they ever did. They learned the lessons of Irene. I did a quick survey on Cozy Beach. I asked 6 people whether they had stayed or left, and all but one had left, and all but one, well, actually one said they always left. One said that they hadn't left in 50 years, but they heard what we were saying, and the others agreed that that's why they left. The one guy who didn't leave was actually not on the beach. He was across the water and back by the school. So I guess that's why he stayed. The people immediately on the water listened better than ever. Would be certainly better than I'm used to having being listened to. But it was the folks who were just a little bit further in, who have never seen the type of rise in water that we experienced yesterday, who didn't listen as well. And that was the real problem. And as I don't think you were here this morning, and as I was getting detailed last night about this massive amount of water flowing into the Western Sound between the hours of, really about 7 o'clock to 7:45, maybe 6:45 to 7:45. We needed to do something to respond specifically to the people who had never been surrounded by water before. And that's when we came out and made it very clear that the safest place you could be if you're surrounded by water was in the house that you were currently in. It certainly wasn't getting in that water and vacating yourself. Now the story about Greenwich. Met this woman. She's on the RTM. She lives right on the water. Her family has been there for 40 years. And in very proud terms, she said that she's never left the house in 40 years. By the way, she was right next to the 3 houses that burned to the ground. And before she told me that part, she told me that I had done a wonderful job in communicating what steps people should take to make sure that they were safe. Then she told me that she ignored that. And then she told me that for the first time in her life, she lost the 2 cars that were on her property because they were inundated by seawater, which actually surrounded her house. Human nature is tough. That's why we spent hour after hour, briefing after briefing, trying to tell people that this storm was different. I believe that in the telling of that over a series of days, we took the steps necessary to save people's lives.
Do you think that this incident confirms what the 2-panel, the 2-storm panel that investigated the 2 storms last year and made recommendations, said that the shoreline zoning laws really have to be revamped? because of this situation?
I think this issue of elevation is a very important one. Another story from my travels today, the substation in Bridgeport, built right along Bridgeport Harbor, was built at the 100-year flood plus 1 foot. Guess what? We need a new standard. And they need to raise those facilities up. And quite frankly, we'll have discussions with the utilities when we're all said and done with this recovery about hardening all of those substation facilities because we've been at this. I've been at this a relatively short period of time. This is my third time of having to handle these kinds of things, and certainly the second one where the water that we got was excessive. One additional point, I was told at Cozy Beach, and this may be one of the blessings in disguise that we had, the water was about 18 inches higher than it was a year ago. But the wave action was not as great, and that's why Cozy Beach has structures that are still standing.
Governor, do you have a preliminary number on how many homes are either destroyed or temporarily uninhabitable?
In the hundreds. We sent helicopters out today. I was not on one of them. I was doing land travel today. But we had a team of people as part of our process to the FEMA and the President that went out and did an aerial. I've had an opportunity to view some of that footage, and it is extraordinary. The scope of the damage that has been done to Connecticut, including large parcels of land with many dwellings on it that are now and continue to be, as of just a couple of hours ago, partially submerged.
What is the threshold? Is there a threshold for damage to get the FEMA declaration?
A lot of damage. I mean, the reason that we've gotten this is we offered evidence that this was damage on a mass level, and that it was crazy to ask us to go and conduct surveys to get to something that everybody could plainly see that we were deserving at the very least along our shore.
What have the two utilities told you about restoration, and is something that they told you sort of behind this your caution a few minutes ago, telling people sort of temper their expectations in terms of getting the power back up?
No, that's not why I said it. Why I said it is I know the extent of the damage that's been done to the system in communities that we haven't even been talking about, waterfront. Places like Trumbull, Connecticut, or Fairfield, Connecticut, which is on the water. I mean, just extreme damage. But they're better at briefing you. Here we are, less than 24 hours, substantially less than 24 hours of high tide last night. And you're asking us to make estimates when restoration is going to be had, when for days we told people if you lost power, you're going to be without power for days, so that the utilities take a little time doing exactly what they said they were going to do, and that is to clear and make safe, to evaluate, and then get to the hard work of reconnecting. Please don't read into any of that disappointment at this stage. If I get disappointed, I think I've evidenced to the people of Connecticut, I've never been afraid to voice my disappointment. I don't think anyone expects me to edit my displeasure at this late stage in my life.
Well, you've laid out you've told us that you've laid out your expectations for them.
Sure.
I'm just wondering what expectations they told that they given you.
I thought I answered that. We have not had that discussion because the evaluation of the damage, which they said would take place as soon as Make Safe had occurred, but obviously is underway at the same time that Make Safe is underway. But you listen, you can ask them all the technical questions you want. You asked me, in essence, whether I had a discussion that leads me to be making certain statements about expectations, and the answer is no, I have not had that discussion. But I've seen the damage myself, as have many citizens across the state seen the damage in their neighborhoods.
So with a lot of people on well water and a lot of damage out there, do you have concerns about drinking water, or what are your thoughts about
We have some limited concerns about drinking water, which are being dealt with in those areas where we think there are issues, and that information is being disseminated on a local basis. Most water in Connecticut is not, well, I shouldn't say, most people do not consume water that it was in a position to be contaminated, or if it was contaminated, would not otherwise be processed. Some people are. We're reaching out to those people. I don't see Jewel here, but we have stuff up on the website. We have advisories. If you want to play it safe and you have well water, boil it.
Are you saying that most of the people in the flooded areas have municipal water? Is that what you're saying?
A very large percentage. There are some people who are in zones that could be contaminated. They're being advised of that, and we have directions for them.
Governor, can I ask you?
Sure.
There was a substantial National Guard presence. Were there any instances of looting that you're aware of?
I was in Bridgeport today, where we did assign some folks last night. I understood that, and it wasn't being described as looting, but they did catch somebody trying to steal a safe out of a store. I think it was a auto repair store. They weren't stealing auto parts. They were stealing the safe. The safe was recovered. We took steps to work in East Haven to provide some assistance there at the request of the mayor. And we lent some effort, and I think we'll do that continuing through tonight in Bridgeport as well as East Haven. There may be a couple of other places where we've lent security.
Just to follow up with Newtown today, they said that because of their electricity problem that they weren't able to pump water, and they're having a huge drinking water problem. I think even at the prison they don't have water tonight.
We've made progress there. Some of the electricity is in fact back on in Newtown. I think you can get some of the answers to that. I know the prison is back on, so showers are in their future as soon as the water system comes on.
Do you have a sense of how the residential damage compares to that of Irene?
I think it is substantially larger. Yes, I think Milford, a lot of destruction. We believe, I've been told, 8 to 10 complete buildings, but many partial destructions and possible leading to total destructions. Cozy Beach, Bridgeport, East Lyme. I mean, this is the damage is far more extensive up and down the length. Seawalls actually destroyed as well, and that's part of the property.
Well,
so,
we had.
It was a variable, and actually the seawalls that I heard most about were further down the western portion of the Sound.
We had complaints after Irene from homeowners at Cozy Beach who were trying to rebuild seawalls, and they were getting a terrible runaround from the DEEP that they couldn't build them. And doesn't this clearly show that the seawalls are needed to be rebuilt, and probably higher than they were?
And anybody who was going to put money into seawalls, and that that's partially federal, it's partially state. There's a lot of regulation on it. Moving the house up is the best way to spend money on that when you are literally right on the water. But I heard the same complaints you did, as did the DEP commissioner. He promised to expedite that process. It was the first time I had ever heard that. That's less than 60 days ago. And he tells me the process is being expedited, and had been expedited to the extent that we as a state can do that.
Governor, do you have any information on the number of people who have been injured in Connecticut as a result?
Well, our current, we believe 4 people lost their lives. I met people today who had, actually I called 2 firemen today in Newtown who received minor injuries that I heard about. Called them today to check up on them and thank them for their service. There are a lot of minor injuries. I haven't gotten a breakdown of how minor the minors are and how more serious anything else is. But I think, like all of these occasions, there were people injured. We lost 4 lives, or we believe we lost 4 lives. We know we have confirmed 2, and certainly believe that 2 others were lost. One last question.
Do you anticipate the necessity for more of these briefings tomorrow?
Are you tired of me? I'm inclined to do a briefing tomorrow at 8:30. We'll share any additional information. We'll probably go to at some point we'll go to 1 a day until we get further in recovery. I'm not anxious to wear out my welcome, but I am anxious to answer your questions. Okay? Thank you very much.